National Association of EMS Educators for inviting me to be part of this and do this presentation. As you said earlier, before we started, that this is a hot topic, and I find that a lot of people have been talking about mentoring quite a bit in the last 4 to 5 years. So what we want to do is talk a bit about mentoring itself, what it is, its impacts, how to introduce it, and how to utilize it, as well as then discussing integrating it with the formal educational process and some of my own experiences I've had doing that with various organizations. This picture here is from the front, is from the Rustling Hose Fire Company, where I started as a volunteer firefighter, EMT, and subsequently paramedic back in 1976. Obviously, that picture does not have me in the picture. This is even farther back than 76. I may be old, but these people are older. What is important about that picture to me is about how this young child has his eyes fixated with wonder and just the overall amazement of the fire department and how they connect with him and how they make him feel like, wow, that's just they're such great people and it's a great thing. And that's what we want all of our people to be able to do with every one of our patients, with every one of our interactions with family members, with the hospital staff, with ancillary people, the police, whoever we might deal with, is that we exude that type of energy that people want to engage with us. And it comes from the way, through their professional development process, how we take them to the next level. And we're going to talk about one part of the professional development process, and that's mentoring. And then we're going to talk about how we integrate it into the educational process. And by the way, anytime you have questions or comments or suggestions, I'll put them up. I can't see them, but Rio can pass them on to me. And we will have some poll questions along the way. So I have my own mentors, and there's many more. And the two here are Bob Brandt, the old man. Bob, I met as a safety supervisor for an electric generating plant. He ultimately became my two sons, my adult sons now, their third grandfather. And he taught me a lot about how to look at things, you know, simple little things like if you're pointing one finger at somebody, that's 3 fingers back at you. He did a lot of woodworking, you know, the standard comment, measure twice, cut once, a lot of little simple things that he taught me. But they really impacted me over my life. On the right is George T. Evans, my first fire chief. He was the volunteer fire chief at Rustling Hose from 1960 to 1980 for 20 years. For me, I spent about 14 years with him as chief. He was a visionary when I started in 76. He was talking about things that people didn't talk about back then. There was very few chiefs in the fire service back then. It was Chief Evans, Chief Brunacini. And so these are two mentors. And in fact, when I became a fire chief and fire and EMS chief in Warrensburg, Missouri in 2000, George, before my wife, before anybody, was the person I called to say I became chief. So I have mentors. I hope you have mentors. There's formal mentors and formal mentors, but we all should have mentors at every level. So we're going to talk mostly about new members, new recruits, whether it's career or volunteer. And back in 1962, Paul Lynn, in the movie Bye Bye Birdie, he had this lament going on, is, you know, kids, I don't know what's wrong with these kids. We can't understand these kids today. They're disobedient, disrespectful. The funny thing is, you know, over 50 years later, over 60 years later, we still hear the same comments. So it's not the generation. It's not Generation Z. And by the way, a lot of people are still utilizing the millennials as the new generation, as the upcoming generation. Millennials have hit 40. They're in the middle age group. So for any of you, the millennials, I don't want to hurt your feelings or get you emotionally upset, but you are now approaching middle age. So we still have these comments, and it's not the kids. It's how we integrate with them. And yes, each generation has some different idiosyncrasies and characteristics and traits. However, the reality is how we interact with them and how we bring them on our organization is important. As we talk about it, we're going to talk about why mentoring is so important. When this happened. So, you know, our concern is that they question everything, that they're lazy, they don't want to work, they never did physical labor. And, you know, in today's age, more than any, it may be even more true, but it doesn't mean that they're not competent and qualified to be in emergency services. They think they're entitled. You know what? I thought I was entitled, you know, 47 years ago. So, you know, there's nothing new. It's how we deal with them, how we're going to talk about how we onboard them, how we orientate them to our organizations. And this one, for any of you that is over 35 years old, and that would include some millennials these days, not like the old days is our problem. It's not their problem. It's not the recruit's problem. It's not the new members' problem. That's our issue, and we need to own up to that. So I think this little video from Office Space gives a great intro of what happens when you create a disaffected employee.
Would you walk us through a typical day for you? Yeah, great. Well, I generally come in at least 15 minutes late. I use the side door. That way Lumberg can't see me. And after that, I just sort of space out for about an hour. Space out? Yeah, I just stare at my desk. But it looks like I'm working. I do that for probably another hour after lunch, too. I'd say in a given week, I probably only do about 15 minutes of real, actual work.
Peter, would you be a good sport and indulge us and just tell us a little more?
Oh, yeah. Let me tell you something about TPS reports.
TPS?
The thing is, Bob, it's not that I'm lazy. It's that I just don't care.
Don't care?
It's a problem of motivation, all right? Now, if I work my ass off and Initech ships a few extra units, I don't see another dime. So where's the motivation? And here's something else, Bob. I have 8 different bosses right now.
I beg your pardon?
8 bosses.
8?
8, Bob. So that means that when I make a mistake, I have 8 different people coming by to tell me about it. That's my only real motivation, is not to be hassled. That and the fear of losing my job. But you know, Bob, that'll only make someone work just hard enough not to get fired.
Would you bear with me for just a second, please?
Okay.
What if, and believe me, this is so hypothetical, but what if you were offered some kind of a stock option equity sharing program? Would that do anything for you?
I don't know, I guess. Listen, I'm gonna go. It's been really nice talking to both of you guys.
Absolutely. The pleasure's all on this side of the table, trust me.
Good luck with your layoffs, all right? I hope your firings go really well.
So in that video, that gentleman didn't get to that point in his career by osmosis. He didn't have that bad attitude, have that attitude that he is only going to do as much as he needs to do just to get by. The environment, the culture of that organization created it. And I suspect highly that his onboarding, his orientation did not give him good, clear direction of expectations in the organization, as well as the organization did not seem to be well organized and run. And if you ever watch the whole movie, you'll see the dysfunction in the overall organization. So again, I just want to go through this quickly. Whose fault is it? I don't want to blame it on anybody of why employees, why new members, why new EMS personnel, paramedics, EMTs become the way they do. I mean, some of them are their own personal traits, the way they were raised, school, other things. But we need to also look at from our perspective of how much influence we're having. If we're the type of people that are going, I don't know why you came to work here. This job sucks. I can't wait to get out. I can't wait to become a cop. I can't wait to become a fireman. If you're not exuding a positive environment for them, a positive attitude, how much are we really creating? So do some self-reflection today and after this of how much influence you're having, both positively and negatively, how you present yourself, your behaviors that are shown in front of your newer employees, your newer members. How much do they have an impact on both their positive or negative attitude towards the job? So I brought up Patch Adams because Patch Adams, Gesundheit, and most of you know the movie. If you don't know the movie Patch Adams, you all need to watch it. In fact, part of the mentoring process I had in my last position as a per diem medic, I was doing mentoring whenever I was working with new employees, new members, new volunteers. We were a combination EMS agency, primarily career, but we had volunteers. We trained paramedic students from a local university. As I had them all watch Patch Adams to get a perspective of how to deal with people. And part of it is when you create your mentors and when you have that vision of who you want people to be like, I think Patch Adams is perfect. And by the way, I highly recommend the book also. I don't get any endorsement for any of it. I just found it very helpful and enlightening towards creating mentoring programs and getting people some perspective of understanding what kind of attitude behavior they should have as they're starting new in EMS. And if you read the book, you'll find out about 70% of the movie is true, and about 30% of it was built as fiction to make the movie. But overall, the book will give you some additional perspective. So first of all, question, and I think Rio's a good time. How many have a formal field training program? So some kind of training that you have go through and you're training your people, you have a checklist, you have an organization, you have a guideline, a policy on doing field training. How many people have a field training program, formal one? What do we?
So right now, the majority says yes, 76% yes, and 24% no.
Okay, well, that's good. That's good. It's a good start. So what we're going to talk about in a little bit is how does that match up with your mentoring program? One of the little problems. Okay. So, excellent. So what is mentoring for organizational impact? Because we want to talk about that before we get to talk about how it integrates with the formal educational program. So what we need to know is what is an actual mentor and the difference between field training officer and a mentor. And can they be both the same? Absolutely. Can they be separate? Can you have a field training officer and have a mentor? Absolutely. But you should have some perspective of what that looks like. What are the traits of a mentor? And, it's my perspective in doing some research on, as well as my own experiences, someone who teaches, it gives help and advice to less experienced and often younger, but not always. As I said, we all should have mentors all the way through our career, all the way through our life. A trusted counselor or guide, right? trust is key. So when we talk about more about the traits and the attributes of a mentor, trust is key. So these in italics here is my perspective. In fire and emergency services, being a mentor is halfway between being a drill sergeant and Mother Teresa. Has the skills of a teacher and a psychologist. And, you know, you have to be empathetic, compassionate, and respectful. But you also need to know as a mentor when you got to kind of set the law, set down and set down clear expectations. And as a psychologist, you need to understand a little bit understand where people are coming from. And mentoring is, I find, I call it 3 types. There's formal and informal. And the formal are the people that actually, that there's a structured program, you meet with your mentor on a regular basis. Informal are those people, the senior guy who sits in the back of the room and says, hey kid, let's have a talk. Let me tell you about what I've learned in 20 years. And there's no formal relationship, but they learn from. Unintentional is that person that they're watching all the time, that you're not aware of, that person that they're glued to, that they look to as a representative, as their image of what a great, either a good or a bad EMS professional is. So all of us are unintentional mentors, and we should be aware of how we present ourselves 100% of the time, because somebody is watching us, somebody is paying attention to us. And again, almost everyone's an unintentional mentor, and you should be aware of your impact. What is mentoring for? Who should be used by? New recruits. Anybody climbing the ladder, any personnel climbing the ladder, personnel looking for improvement. So you just want to improve. You want to get better at interpersonal communications. You want to be better at developing compassion for your patients and your family. And anyone in general should be used in a mentor for multiple different reasons. And if you're not doing that now, you should be figuring, where can I use a trusted counselor and a guide that can help me? So these pictures here, down in the bottom of the 3 little kids in the firefighter outfits, I just kind of see them as, you know, that's how we should see our new recruits, our new people. They're full of wonder and amazement. They want to learn. They want to be like the real EMTs and paramedics. But they're not quite yet there because they're beginning. And in the upper 2 pictures, on the left-hand side was an explorer group we started in the last EMS agency I was. And on the right-hand side, and in fact, we just had it yesterday, our local fire department partners with police and EMS and actually does a kids camp. So for, you know, for 2 days in the summer, we get these kids together and we try to mentor them into good behaviors in general as children and as humans, but we also try to give them some understanding of what emergency service is like, and you know, why maybe they might want to become part of that. And so, you know, real early on, we're starting to mentor people in a way that we may not be aware of. So the goals of mentoring program, right, is to create motivated and engaged employees, and take employees for if you have volunteers, for volunteers. As I said, a lot of the mentoring I did in our organization were volunteers. And in fact, the way we got a lot of our career EMTs, they came in as volunteers. At some point, they would apply for employment and become per diem or full-time employees. So this one is a key one. It's extremely important. And I don't know how many of your organizations, and I probably should have put this, Rio, as a question to ask. So how many of your organizations have strong core values, strong strategic core values that you live by, that your organization is founded and operates by? Because if you don't have that, you're not going to create motivated and engaged employees. If you don't have a solid mission and vision is important too, but solid mission, but especially values. What is the important values for your organization? You know, compassion, integrity. If it's all about saving lives and, you know, responding to an emergencies, then your organization values probably are not going to meet the expectations of your community, because 90% of what we do is provide compassion, respect, and empathy. But you all need to figure that out for your organization, because once you provide those organizational values and expectations and overall expectation, what your organization's like, what the history is, what your culture is like, you should be, and I believe in the word for this, the people that are just starting out, you should be indoctrinating to your organization. I want everybody in the organization at some point to provide their influence and provide their input, because today's generation is going to be the future of EMS, right? I don't want to stifle them, but in the beginning, they need to know clearly the expectations. They need to understand clearly the culture of your organization. And if the culture of your organization is not great, it could be better, don't hide it. Tell them that, hey, we have some issues, some challenges, but we're working on it. And that's what we need you to do as you come into this organization, to be a positive reflection of the culture that we want to be. We want you to help us build that new positive culture. And the mentoring is for guide for personal improvement. While I just did the International Society of Fire Service Instructor, just started a professional mentoring program. And we got done our first cohort. We're getting ready for our second. And one of the things is not only are we setting professional improvement for a 3-6 month period, a year period, but we're going to continue these relationships. The 3 people I was mentoring, I'm going to continue relationships for as long as I can to help them continue to have a guide for personal improvement. And your guide for personal improvement should be based off an overall professional development plan, right? It should help improve learning and performance with education integration, which we'll talk much more about in a little bit. And mentoring, again, one of the goals is if there's clear expectations shared, if you're mentoring and providing guidance and feedback that's providing them a better vision of who they should be and how they should perform and their behaviors, then it should help reduce discipline and personnel issues. And overall, the goal is that you want to create motivated and engaged employees that are going to be cooperative within the organization. They want to perform in the organization. They don't want to be like that gentleman in the video that only does just as much to get by. And I suspect almost every one of you have at least 1 or 2 in your organization, those just get by people. They're just doing as much as you want, just as much as they can, the little as they can to get by. We want to have as few as them as possible. And for those that are in the organization, we want them to have as little influence as possible of that negative attitude. So what should be in a mentoring program? It should be structured. It should be written, organized, have a plan and description of the purpose. If you don't have that, if you're saying you're doing mentoring, you don't have a program description or purpose, then you should be writing one down, putting it together. It needs to be, if you're running, so I was managing our mentoring program. Management had oversight, but I did it and I was not in management. I mean, I had been in management previously in my life, but at this point, I was just another paramedic, a per diem paramedic, working shifts that took on an extra responsibility, but management supported the efforts and the work that we did, and they supported the policies that we developed. Clearly defined process of how the program's going to work. How is it going to work? Who's going to do it? Who's going to participate? What are the roles? You know, how it's going to work. Is there a timeline? Is there a finite? What objectives? And we'll talk about objectives later. And ultimately, the whole organization needs to have buy-in. So you need to sell this to everybody. you need to sell it to the whole organization and get their buy-in. And you're going to have people that are not going to want to do that. And they have a role. I mean, if you have a mentor, but your recruits are working or riding with different people, you want to be able to interact with them to say, hey, we work with the mentor, and here's their this week, here's the 3 or 4 things we want them to learn. Here's the 3 or 4 behaviors we want them to be better at. So you need to be able to work with all the people in the organization. And recruit mentors. Not everybody's a mentor. I don't care what your pedigree says. I don't know how many certificates you have and what your certificates are at. And you could be a psychologist. You could be the best EMT or paramedic in the world, but you might not be the best mentor. So set up a criteria for selecting your mentor, right? They need to be not only good in general, but when you pair mentors, you need to pair your mentor and the recruit or the mentee with the right person. Not everybody's going to connect. So you might set them up with the first mentor, and that might not work. You might need to put them on to somebody else. Tell everybody, the whole organization should know how the program should be, and then of course, mentors to have specific training on how to be a mentor, what a mentor is. And so my question now, which we can put up, Rio, is how many of you all in your organization have a formal mentoring program?
We're still waiting on a few people to answer, but the majority looks like no. I will share the results as soon as we are done here.
Sure. So, and quite frankly, that's what I expected. So for all of you on here, I'm extremely happy. I would ask you to take the challenge to work within your organization. Yeah, overwhelmingly, 70% have no formal. I would highly recommend that you start something informally, but help work and develop a formal mentoring program. The payoff is immeasurable. Is it a lot of work on the front end? Sure it is, but it's well worth it. And again, we'll talk about this later, but you need to have periodic review. You need to have key performance indicators of your program, not just your interaction with your recruits, of how well the program's working. And again, you want to utilize best practices. A lot of what I'm talking about was not just Tony Correia's thoughts and ideas and experiences, but it's the research I did and found what's happening in corporate America. And in ISFI, we use a program called Mentor City. And besides being a great tool, what it indicated to me that mentoring is a big thing in a lot of industries and organizations. So if there's a company called Mentor City, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of industries and organizations that find mentoring critical. So what do you want it to do for the people, the individual benefits for the recruits, for the mentees? You want to build confidence. You want to increase their knowledge base and skills for the job, even though we're going to talk more about the essential, and I hate the word soft skills, but we're going to talk about stuff like emotional intelligence and talk about, those type of things and values. But overall, we want to build their ability to be overall well-rounded EMS professionals. And we want to improve interpersonal skills a lot. We don't teach interpersonal skills in EMT or paramedic program. We teach people how to be emergency responders. I took my first EMT class in 1977, and they taught me how to save lives. Became a paramedic in 1980, learned how to save lives. What I start finding out, though, is I did really little life saving. That was a very small part of my job. I became disgruntled. I became disenchanted with EMS because I'm supposed to save lives. But at some point, I got the epiphany that I understood that the key the key really was about building interpersonal skills, was about building those relationship skills to deal with patients, to deal with family, to deal with hospital staff, to deal with other ancillary personnel, to deal with our own coworkers. Mentoring is going to help reduce stress. If people feel more confident in their job, they're going to have less stress. And overall, this generation now is going to be us older people, and in the future, they're going to be the torchbearer of information. So our mentoring, what we provide them, the knowledge, skills, and abilities, is they're going to take what we teach them and pick up their own experiences and transfer it to the next generation. So I'm going to go through this quickly because there's other stuff I want to cover, but we must have the time to commit, not just a 9-to-5 job, right? And the first time you meet with your recruit, you can't give a bad first impression. It's like, oh, you know what? I was going to meet with you today, but I know I'm supposed to meet with you in an hour, but you know, I got a chance to go to the shore, so I'm not going. Yeah, I don't know how many from the East Coast, but you know, shore instead of beach is a Jersey thing. But you don't want to give that bad first impression. Be ready for that. Be engaged, be ready to have the right handshake, the right look in the eyes, the right smile, have the right conversation started. And if you have to make notes and write that down, then do it. As I said earlier, not every two personalities are going to get along. So make sure that you fit the mentor and the recruit, that they're a good fit. You might have to change it up. Even though the mentor might be a great person, they just might not fit the personality of that recruit. You have to have a passion for the job. You can't go, well, I want to become a mentor because then I become a field training officer and then it gets me qualified to become a supervisor so I can get a raise. You should become a mentor because you want to make the organization people better that you bring into the organization. They're the people that find working in fire and emergency services a privilege, that they're glad to be there, not that it's a burden. That they understand it's a privilege to serve to the community. Anybody that has the attitude that we save lives and you should bow down to us, that, you know, we're here to save your life, save your butt, not kiss it, you're not going to make it as a mentor. And by the way, when we developed the whole program, this is the type of stuff you should be describing to your potential mentors of the expectations. So when they go, well, look, I got all these classes in mentoring and I got a degree in mentoring, but they really don't have the behavior and attributes and the traits of a good mentor, you spelled it out for them ahead of time. You know what? Your organization is the most trusted in the community, fire and EMS. So the people that are your mentors need to understand that and act like it. You need to have a good attitude toward the job in general. You got to be able to inspire, even when the job sucks. You got to be able to be enthusiastic to your mentor, even when the job sucks. And you got to be understanding and empathetic. You got to be understanding to listen, not to just answer. A lot of being a mentor is just listening and understanding and then asking the recruit, so what are you going to do with that? The last 3 recruits I had with ISFI, and all of them were high performing. One had a master's degree and going for a PhD. Another one's a battalion chief. Another was a retired fire chief. A lot of what I did was listen and then ask them, so what do you want to do with that? What do you think you could do with that? And then provide maybe a few suggestions. But a good mentor needs to be listening and understanding and having patience. Not everybody grows the same, so you need to be patient to provide that input. And Rio, I'm just going to ask, I see that there's 2 comments in the chat. Is it anything that we want to respond to at this point?
Robin said that interpersonal skills are not stressed enough. 50% of care is being polite. So not a question, just a comment.
Okay, cool. We're going to get to that in a little bit. So again, there's a lot of things that a good mentor, but I found that the things that I did wrong, I tell, especially the battalion chief I worked with, I would tell her all the time, I'd said, a lot of the stuff that I'm talking to you about is not because I did it right. It's because I did it wrong first, and then I learned from it. So, don't just tell them about all the good things you did. If you're a mentor, tell them about, but not in a way like it's cool to do bad things. It's cool to do things that are wrong. No, I did things that I wish I didn't do, but now that I did, I learned from them, and I want you to learn from them too. And again, I talked about understanding. That means you need to learn how to listen. I took a class in the psychology of relationships many years ago, and I find that and several other psychology and doing some stuff with mental health, that learning and having some basic understanding of human psychology really helps being a mentor. If you're going to give your opinion, a lot of people in fire and emergency service, there's no shortage of opinion in fire and EMS. But if you're going to give an opinion, make sure you can back it up with facts. Make sure that you have good facts and research that you can go, here's my opinion, here's why, and here's where you can go find that data. This is where you can find that research information. Mentoring is about them. If you think you're going to get into this about making yourself feel good about being a mentor, it's really about them. Although I can tell you, everybody I ever mentored, I've learned immensely from them, and the great feeling it gave me from being able to be supportive. Not always helpful, being supportive, but my goal is to help them succeed. And again, when I see them succeed, that's my reward. Not that I taught them all the stuff, that they succeeded. Maybe they used a little of my information, not a lot. You want to be able to give guidance, constructive feedback. That's not easy. And again, in fire and EMS, the EMS fire, however you want to see it, I saw a friend of mine say, I still like to have friends that don't get mad when I insult them. And look, we pick on each other, and we have good-natured ribbing and probably even insults, but that is not where you start with recruits. That's not where you start with mentees. You don't want to berate or belittle. You want to provide them constructive feedback. You don't want to beat them up early. I remember when I worked in construction, I had a supervisor and was kind of joking. He was always like, "Hey kid, come on, get that board, get the saw. Come on, kid, what are you doing? You ain't getting stuff done." And quite frankly, it was a bit stressful for me. For him, he thought it was kind of fun. So you don't want to berate or belittle. And if you don't know how to give guidance or constructive feedback, it's something you need to learn. And you provide corrective action when it's need to, and don't let continuous poor performance continue. People that have continuous poor performance, say for 2, 3, 4 sessions, 2, 3, 4 months, and now you want to correct it, they're going to go, why didn't you say anything before? Correct problems as you see them, as they pop up, but do it have a structured process for corrective actions. Finally, walk the walk. How can you need to practice what you preach. I worked for a boss for 15 years that I will subject to you as the worst boss in the world. And he was always talk the talk and never walk the walk. He was do as I say, but don't do as I do. Encourage critical analysis, have your people do research. Had a EMT I worked with all the time becoming a medic student, and he would always ask me questions as he was going through medic school. And he would ask me a question, and I would say, Blake, 1-800-Google. The whole goal was, hey, go out there and learn. We'll have a discussion. I'll follow up on your request, but go do some research and tell me what you find and tell me what you think. And then we'll have that critical discussion of analysis, that critical analysis discussion. Have them challenge status quo. We've changed a lot in EMS. No longer do we give bicarb and calcium chloride for every cardiac arrest. We don't use mask pants anymore. Long spine board and spinal immobilization has been changed because we challenge status quo. We don't want them to challenge leadership, but we want them to learn to challenge status quo. But they got to do it based on research, on facts, and critical analysis. And you're not an expert in everything. So what you don't know, find other people to help them. You know, if you're talking about starting IVs and you're not good at it, or you're talking about reading 12 leads and you're not good at it, send them to somebody else. And you want to always encourage that they're just starting out in this industry, in this business, that they're going to learn. It's going to be lifelong learning. It's not just this early initiation phase of being a recruit.
Always with you what cannot be done. Hear you nothing that I say. You must unlearn what you have learned.
All right, I'll give it a try.
No, try not. Do or do not. There is no try.
So two things I got from that is that at that point, Yoda felt that Mark needed to have, an extra push and maybe a little bit stern. He wasn't calm, but he also made him understand that he needed to actually take action, that he needed to do something, and that he pushed. So when he said, I'll try, he said, that's not good enough. Trying isn't good. So you need to know when to just kind of be, you know, laid back and supportive, and when to go, you know what, nah, you're not cutting it. You need to do better. You need to put better effort toward it. But when you do that, make sure you give them what the expectations are of what you want them to do. So the expectations of the recruit, and you should explain this. This should be in writing. This should be a checklist you give your recruits. Come with an attitude to learn. Explain what that is. Come with the committed to the process of learning, to becoming an EMT, becoming a paramedic, becoming an EMS provider, to becoming a healthcare professional, to becoming a public safety professional. Develop heart. What is heart? It's a whole nother article, but basically it's learning how to be honorable, ethical, accountable, responsible, trustworthy, and have integrity, right? And that's the personal core values. There's many others that you can bring into it, but that's at least 6 core values that somebody should bring to the job. And if they haven't developed them, then they should be expected to develop those core values. But if you don't have organizational core values to match them up against, to connect them with, then you're going to have a hard time supporting them having personal core values. Show respect. Tell them they need to show respect to all they may deal with in the process. Remember, we talked about way earlier, they have no respect. They don't listen. They do what they want to do. Explain to them what your expectations, clearly understand the expectations, that, you know, they need to be open to a different view than theirs. Maybe they got away with that at home or in their other job, that they could say what they want, but they need to be open to different views. That they're going to set common goals with the mentors. It's key to have written down goals, set goals that you're going to be assessed on a regular basis and how well you're coming to meet them. Take constructive criticism and corrective action feedback as part of the learning process. And again, we're worried that they can't take corrective action, that they can't take criticism. Have a proper constructive criticism, corrective action process, and explain to them that it's not an attack on their character, but they're going to get constructive criticism. That's how they're going to grow. That's how they're going to become better. And they can always ask questions, but ask them respectfully. So just quickly, we don't have time. This could be a whole class. This could be a whole semester, but understanding emotional intelligence, they need to understand their emotional intelligence. You need to have a way of assessing their level of emotional intelligence. This will help you to find areas where they need support and growth and where they're strong at. And I'll be glad to send some of this stuff if anybody wants it. But what I basically did is take the generic emotional intelligence concepts and traits and develop an outline of what it looks like to have low emotional intelligence and high emotional intelligence. So it gives you some barometer when you look at your recruits of understanding where they are. And I can tell you, if you spend a significant amount of time of understanding emotional intelligence, this will help you greatly with the mentoring program. So once you've discussed what the program is, what the goals are, how it's supposed to work, what the mentors are supposed to be like, what the recruits are, you need to just to go, what are the expectations between a mentor and a recruit? Mentor should understand there's no one formula to connecting, that they don't go in with a formula that everybody. I had 3 different mentees that I was working with recently, and each one of them, I had to have a different way of dealing with them because that was their personality. Not bad or good, just different. Hold everybody. So if you, both the mentor and the mentee, the recruit, have to be held accountable for their part of the deal, whatever, and it should be in writing. There should be a written document of what the expectations are. Have a balanced discussion. Personal issues, it's a fine line. You need to know when, look, we can't go there. And when, but my mom's been sick a lot, or my daughter's been sick, you probably can have some discussion and be empathetic and compassionate and supportive in that area. And again, clear expectation of each other as well as boundaries. Don't talk down to, communicate with on both sides. And again, set the goals and objectives. They should be written. And all of this stuff here, if you could take this and turn this into a checklist for the comments and the expectations of the process.
Very, very nice. Sister, would you come over here, please? Just slide right in here, please. It's right here. That's a powerful instrument you have there. But I think it's probably a good idea if we bring you down out of the rafters. I mean, everybody wants to be close to God. I'm just not sure you can do it vocally. Okay, so I need you to sing an octave below where you've been singing.
So Whoopi took a much different approach than Yoda did. Explained to her, was nice, but told her she was not able to do what she thought she can do, and she probably should work in a different a different range of singing, and still did it in a very positive manner. And it's key to doing, having different styles and know when to interact those different styles with different people and at different times, depending on the situation. As much as we try to make mentoring a science, it's still, there's a fair amount of art form. So I'm going to move on from this, but basically you have to understand what the pitfalls to avoid, right? Treating them like one of the guys until they actually, they get through their orientation, they get on shift, they're performing. Everybody should be welcomed into the organization, not like, oh, here comes another one. There should be a formal welcoming process. They should be assigned a mentor early, not late. The organization and people have to have a commitment to the program. You have to have, we'll talk about this in a minute, you have to have a formal review process. You need to assign the right mentor, the right person to mentor, and you have to hold the recruits accountable. You just can't say, you're always doing good. You got to be honest with them when they're not. And you will have people that will try to sabotage your program. So I want to be able to spend some time here. So the next question is, how many have a process where they integrate their mentoring with the formal training process? Real, that one.
Yep.
And there is a bunch of questions, so we're doing that. Any questions or comments we should discuss at this point?
Not yet, but there's a lot of people interested in obtaining the information you shared earlier.
Sure, not a problem. Either at the end they have my email, or they can go through you to do that.
Perfect. Yeah. If you'd like, you can email me that information and then I can include it in the follow-up email tomorrow for
Sure.
everyone.
And also at the end, there's a link on my website. So I'm impressed. There's actually 48% that have the mentors interact with the formal training program. And that's important. If you don't, it's something you should be doing. So if I can get this to close. Didn't want that to happen. So when you're integrating with your formal educational program, was it a paramedic program? It's an EMT program. It's you have a new leadership training program. You have a mentor training program that you're training. Think about this. You're training people to become mentors. They actually should have a mentor that's helping them learn how to be good mentors, right? So the expectations of what is going to be part of the program should be clearly communicated. How will the mentors integrate with the formal education program? What were the expectations will be? When will you communicate? And we'll talk about that more in a little bit. You should have some performance metrics to understand if the organization is, if this process is working, if it isn't, evaluation process. So this here is a checklist that I actually got from one of the paramedic programs I dealt with, that these are things that we assess the recruit for. Now, obviously, most of these are technical skills, but we have other pages that really relate to their emotional intelligence that we complete too. So we have performance metrics to see if the mentoring program is helping them meet the expectations of the formal education program. And again, a checklist, various checklists. This is just one, not just a checklist for the individual, but the checklist for the organization. How is the program going? In fact, one of the things we're doing right now with the ISFI program is we're going to evaluate how we did with our first cohort of mentees because they weren't recruits. All of them were fairly experienced. How did the program go? How could that get better? What's the implementation process? How is this going to happen? What's the kickoff? What are we going to be looking for? And there should be regular communication feedback loop. How's it going to happen? When are you going to meet face to face? Have a written formal program, what the expectation of the mentors are, what their expectation, how that relates to the formal education program. And I did this a while back, so we utilize it fairly, we're using it now. So you use video conferencing that the mentors are communicating with the education program. So in one of the situations when I dealt with Jefferson, it was Jefferson University in Philadelphia, they had a representative for the field training programs because they had several EMS agencies that were field training sites. And I had that contact and I contacted him on a regular basis. And hey, things are going well. I have some concerns here. What are they going to be learning next? Where they are at in the educational program? What should we be talking to them about as far as the educational process? So have a plan for sustainability and continuous improvement. And that's where you have to have that feedback loop and an analysis. And we'll talk about that continuous improvement, but have a program that this is not one and done, that you're going to be sustainable. So you need to review what went well and what to do. Have a program management plan, call it project management for a program, but you have that laid out, that you have those things that you're checking on a regular basis, that things are working, and that you have action items that are being reviewed and identified if those action items are working or they're not working, or if you need revisions. Always have after action analysis and review of you get done a cohort of mentoring. And you should have formal mentoring should be somewhere between 3 months and 6 months. And when you're done, an after action analysis, how did it go with this cohort? How did it go with the individuals? How did it go with the program overall? And then what do we need to do? And everybody, all the stakeholders, the mentors, the mentees, management, who's ever involved, the educational program should be part of this process. Utilize it, there's different ways. I like use it for areas of improvement, use the SWOT analysis, do the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And out of that, come up with action items and go, look, we did really well here. So let's continue this. Maybe let's build on it here. On here, we didn't really do a good job communicating with, and I'll just call it for this situation, the paramedic program on a regular basis. We only contacted them. We had this student in our mentoring field training program for 6 months, and we only communicated with him once in between. So where can we improve? And those action items, the key to action items is they're action items. The word action means action needs to be taken. And that's why you have them in a project management process where you say, okay, when am I going to review this? Okay, we're going to review this in 2 weeks. So in 2 weeks, you have deliverables, expectations to the program to make it work. As I said early on, look to the outside of EMS for examples. There's tons of organizations. Mentoring is key in large corporations, internationally, nationally, in all industries. It is critically important. The data is out there. Why mentoring, and in an hour, we didn't have enough time to cover it all, why mentoring is so important and effective. And have at least one, if not two, cheerleaders for your program. Somebody, and quite frankly, for me, that was me. I was a cheerleader that when things got low, when people didn't want to get involved, when people, this isn't working, or we don't have the time, you have to have that cheerleader. Find that person that really wants to get engaged and make this mentoring program work. So this last video, and we'll end up, and then any questions, we're about right on time. I honestly can't see anything in the chat. So any questions, comments, while we're doing that, here are the last couple questions that we want to do. So if you could do one, Rio, and then a couple minutes the next. Does your organization have a formal onboarding orientation recruit program? And then when we finish the video, as I'm closing out, do you set clear expectations and values for your new recruits?
Wear that ring and approach the rail. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, 8.
Jump on this leg, please. Jump. Navy divers, stand down.
Diver, you will disregard. This is my detail. God damn it, Cookie. Move your ass. I want my 12. The Navy diver is not a fighting man. He is a salvage expert. 10. If it's lost underwater, he finds it. If it's sunk, he brings it up. If it's in the way, he moves it. 11. If he's lucky, he will die young 200 feet beneath the waves. Well, that is the closest he will ever get to being a hero. Hell, I don't know why anybody'd want to be a Navy diver. Now you report to this line, Cookie.
So why I like this clip for mentoring is De Niro did not earn that respect that he got Cookie to come to that line with all the obstacles that he had to go against and he had to fight to get to it. It's because De Niro built a relationship with him early on, even though if you watch the movie, they didn't get along. But he built a relationship, he built respect. And it may not have been a formal mentoring program, but not only did he field train him how to be a technically proficient diver, he mentored him on how to develop character, attitude, and value. So I like this at the end. I use this at the end a lot because this is ultimately what we want all our people to be able to do. And you notice he didn't talk about him being a hero or anything. Talked about him doing a day in and day out job. And that's what we should be. We should talk about saving lives, but we should also be talking about what we do day in and day out. Treating people with dignity, respect, and understanding, to provide compassion and support whenever they need it. And I think he did that. And by the way, in your first set of questions, I'm glad that you have you have an onboarding orientation process, and I didn't ask it in the question. I would subject to you to think about building a mentoring program into it, and on top of building a mentoring program into it, connect the mentoring with any significant education. So EMT programs, paramedic programs, supervisor, training officer programs, any programs of any significance where people are in your organization are going to be in it for a while, so you can get feedback to make sure that they're in connection with what the organization's expectations are, as well as with the education environment. And hopefully, not only will they come back and be a better employee member for you, and for the organization and for the community, but they'll also do better in the testing process. So I'm glad again to see that everybody said they set clear expectations of values for the new recruits. So if this is something that you end up complaining about, then probably the missing link is not having a good mentoring program. So that I close with, I thank you for your time and energy. I find mentoring to be a key part of developing any people in life, your children, school children, but especially people in EMS. And in today's day and age where our paradigm is changing from going to emergencies to doing community paramedicine to mobile integrated health, that we need to even more utilize the mentoring to develop those critical, essential, I hate to again use the word, soft skills. So with that, any information you need, I will send to Rio, or you can send me an email directly. Also, I have some mentoring resources related to this program, as you can see on that link on my blog on my webpage. Any questions for me that I can answer before we close up?
There's no other questions in the chat. Let's see if anybody else has any questions. Dawn asks, what is a poor turnover rate % in a company?
Excuse me?
What would be a poor turnover rate in a company?
You know, I don't have a specific number. What I will tell you that every person you turn over, you've had a substantial, and you need to figure this out. Figure some metrics of what's cost you to bring on a new person. You send them to field training. So I just went and became a per diem instructor for one of the local hospitals, and you know they spent probably, and I'm just per diem instructor. probably spent well over $1,000 on me just to get me brought up to speed and orientated to the organization. So you need to figure out what costs, what personnel, what it takes to bring somebody back up to train them to that level and what that costs you, because that's going to get to the next point. It might be one person. If you're a small organization, it might be one person that takes you over the edge. You know, in a larger organization, it might be 10 or 15. But I will tell you, talking to a fire chief who's looking at people that go into the fire departments in California, that they're having somewhere between a 10 and 15% washout rate in recruit school. That's costing hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's a significant loss of people that they can't bring on till the next class, which might not be till a year later. So while I can't give you a specific answer, you need to look at what impact that you know, losing those people are at. And I personally think every person you lose, and you're not going to save them all, but every person you lose is something you should lose. If you don't have an exit interview to see why they left, if you're not looking at what things are making people leave your organization, then you're never really going to have it. And then take a look of how do we build that into our, address these issues through our mentoring program.
Perfect. That looks like the end of the questions. A lot of compliments for you though. Awesome program. Many thanks for this today. Very valuable. So it looks like everybody really enjoyed it, which is great.
Well, I'm glad it was worth it. I'm glad to have such a high turnout. I think 31 is a great turnout. And I really thank you all for participating. Again, anything I could do, my buddy Virginia Wilson's on. Good to see you, Virginia. And I know you're carrying on a lot of these same practices in your organization. I'm good. Here's my information. Be glad to contact you at any time.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Anthony. That was a fantastic presentation. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. I put the link to register for the CE in the chat, but it will also be sent out in tomorrow's follow-up email, as well as all of the contact information for Anthony. I will include that as well. So thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Have a great day.
Bye.